President Obama, well, I've been consistent throughout my travels in Asia. We welcome China's peaceful rise. We have a constructive relationship with China. There is enormous trade, enormous business that's done between the United States and China. There are a whole range of issues on the international stage in which cooperation between the US and China are vital. So our goal is not to counter China. Our goal is not to contain China. Our goal is to make sure that international rules and norms are respected. And that includes in the area of maritime disputes. We do not have claims in this area territorially. We're an Asia-Pacific nation and our primary interest is the peaceful resolution of conflict. The freedom of navigation that allows for continued progress and prosperity. And we don't even take a specific position on the disputes between nations. But as a matter of international law and international norms. We don't think that coercion and intimidation is the way to manage these disputes. And for that reason we're very supportive of President Benigno's approach to go before the tribunal for the law of the sea and to seek international arbitration that can resolve this in a diplomatic fashion. With respect to the new defense cooperation agreement that's been signed, the goal here is wide-ranging. We've had decades of alliance with the Philippines. But obviously in the 21st century we have to continue to update that. And the goal for this agreement is to build Philippine capacity, to engage in training. to engage in coordination not simply to deal with issues of maritime security, but also to enhance our capabilities. So that if there's a natural disaster that takes place, we're able to potentially respond more quickly. If there are additional threats that may arise, that we are able to work in a cooperative fashion. This is consistent with, for example, the agreement that we have with Australia, in Darwin. Obviously, we've had a long-standing alliance with Australia, but we also recognize that as circumstances change, as capacities change, we have to update that alliance to meet new needs and new challenges. And so, I think this is going to be a terrific opportunity for us to work with the Philippines to make sure that our navies our Air Force are coordinated, to make sure that there's information sharing to allow us to respond to new threats. And to work with other countries, ASEAN countries, Australia, Japan. My hope is that at some point we're going to be able to work cooperatively with China as well. Because our goal here is simply to make sure that everybody is operating in a peaceful, responsible fashion. When that happens, that allows countries to focus on what's most important to people day to day. And that is prosperity, growth, jobs. Those are the things that we as leaders should be focused on, need to be focused on. And if we have security arrangements that avoid conflict and dispute, then we're able to place our attention on where we should be focused. Mr. Carney, the next question comes from Margaret Taleff of Bloomberg. Question, Mr. President, later today we are expecting to hear about new sanctions on people close to President Putin. And I wanted to ask you, do you see this as a way to get to Mr. Putin's personal wealth? Do you believe that he has amassed personal wealth that's unreported? Or is it just a means of ratcheting up pressure before a move to sectoral sanctions? You mentioned yesterday specifically the defense industry as an area where it doesn't make sense to move without Europe moving. I wanted to ask you, are we likely to see defense sanctions soon? Banking and energy sanctions soon? What kind of time frame? And then, President Aquino, if I may, I also wanted to ask you about China and the new agreement. What I wanted to ask you is what message should China take away from the US? And the G7's approach to Russia and Ukraine when it comes to territorial disputes? And do you believe that the military agreement that we've just been talking about will in end? Of itself deter China from being aggressive territorially? Or should the US begin developing military options that could be possible contingencies if you needed to go that course? Thanks. President Obama, you're right, Margaret, that later today there will be an announcement made. And I can tell you that it builds on the sanctions that were already in place. As I indicated, we saw an opportunity through the Geneva talks to move. In the direction of a diplomatic resolution to the situation in Ukraine. The G7 statement accurately points out that the government in Kiev, the Ukrainian government, has, in fact, abided by that agreement and operated in good faith. And we have not seen comparable efforts by the Russians. And as a consequence, we are going to be moving forward with an expanded list of individuals and companies. That will be affected by sanctions. They remain targeted. We will also focus on some areas of high-tech. Defense exports to Russia that we don't think are appropriate to be exporting in this kind of climate. The goal here is not to go after Mr. Putin, personally. The goal is to change his calculus with respect to how the current actions that he's engaging. In Ukraine could have an adverse impact on the Russian economy over the long haul. And to encourage him to actually walk the walk and not just talk the talk when it comes to diplomatically resolving the crisis in Ukraine. There are specific steps that Russia can take. And if it takes those steps, then you can see an election taking place in Ukraine. You can see the rights of all people inside of Ukraine respected. The Ukrainian government has put forward credible constitutional reforms of the sort that originally Russian-speaking Ukrainians in the south and east said were part of their grievances. The failure to have their voices heard and represented. Kiev has responded to those. And so there's a path here to resolve this. But Russia has not yet chosen to move forward. And these sanctions represent the next stage in a calibrated effort to change Russia's behavior. We don't yet know whether it's going to work. And that's why the next phase, if, in fact, we saw further Russian aggression towards Ukraine, could be sectoral sanctions. Less narrowly targeted, addressing sectors like banking or the defense industry. So those would be more broad-based. Those aren't what we'll be announcing today. Today's will be building on what we've already done and continue to be. Narrowly focused, but will exact some additional costs on the Russians. But we are keeping in reserve additional steps that we could take should the situation escalate further. President Aquino, first of all, I think China shouldn't be concerned about this agreement. Especially if you look at what is being contemplated, for instance, training for emergency disaster relief operations. I'll give you a perfect example. The Americans have the V-22 Osprey aircraft, which is quite a significant upgrade in capabilities in terms of reaching out to very remote areas. We don't have a comparable aircraft. We have smaller helicopters. And we had 44 of our provinces devastated by Typhoon Haiyan. Now, the training will not just train our people on how to operate this particular aircraft. But more importantly, even help the Office of Civil Defense, for instance. Manage this resource in case a storm or another natural disaster of the scale that transpired does happen. Secondly, I think the statements that America has been making with regards to Ukraine is the same message that has been said to China. And I guess not only by America but so many other countries. China itself has said repeatedly that they will and have been conforming to international law. And the rest of the world is, I think, saying we are expecting you to confirm and, by actions. That which you have already been addressing by words, and not distort international law. The Philippines has not just won through arbitration, but we did remind obviously the President and our dialogue partners that in 2002 they tried to come up with a code of conduct with regards to the South China Sea and the portion which the Philippines claims, which we call the West Philippine Sea. And in 2012, the 10th anniversary, there had still been no progress even in the meeting. So the Philippines felt it was timely to raise the matter up and to remind everybody that there is no code of conduct that binds us, that sets the operational parameters for all to manage any potential conflict. And as a result of that, there has been preparatory meetings towards the formal meeting to try and constitute a code of conduct. So at the end of the day, we are not a threat militarily to any country. We don't even have, and I have said this often enough, we don't even have presently a single fighter aircraft in our inventory. Now, we have, I think, legitimate needs. We have a 36,000-kilometer coastline. We do have an exclusive economic zone. We do have concerns about poaching on our waters and preserving the environment and even protecting endangered species. So I think no country should begrudge us our rights to be able to attend to our concerns and our needs.